Hello and welcome to the In Conversation With podcast with me, Mike Phillips. Welcome to episode 3 of season 1. I'm absolutely over the moon to introduce on this episode Mr. Jonathan Goodman from the PTDC. Awesome.
Here we go.
Awesome. Great stuff. Well, I'll be honest, I didn't never in a million years thought I'd have a chance to sit down and have a chat with you especially over a podcast. So
hey, here we go.
Yeah, it's massively appreciated. I myself have done OTA 1 online training in Academy 1. So if is no sort of agenda, no structure, it's literally just the way I wanted to run the podcast is just have genuine conversations. So like you say, have as many meaningful conversations as you can.
Right.
So for anyone that's living under a rock, why don't you just tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's John. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you all. I've been running a platform for personal trainers for the last 10 years called the Personal Trainer Development Center. It grew out of my career training clients. And I initially wrote a book for trainers, started that platform, and I've written now 11 books for trainers. Our website's reached about 20 million people since inception in the last 10 years. Put on a bunch of conferences, created a certification for online fitness. We're coming out with software pretty soon. I just basically make up stuff as I go and put it out into the world. And if it works, I keep it and stick with it and put a team in charge to run it. And if it doesn't work, I just pretend that it never happened and move on to the next.
Awesome. So how did the Personal Training Development Center start?
Personal Trainer Development Center started... It's hard to say, right? It's always hard to go back in time and remember like all of the different steps. Yeah. It's really easy to make up a really rational, nice sounding post narrative about how all these things happen and smooth out the edges and make it a lot cleaner than it actually was. But I really don't know a lot of it. What I remember is that I was training clients in a gym and I was doing well with it. I was enjoying it, but I was young. I was, 23 years old, 24 years old. And I'd kind of like reached the top of what you could do training clients. I was charging as much as you could charge for training clients. I was, referring my overloader clients to other trainers. I was earning a salary for managing clients. I was the senior trainer at my club as well. So I was earning a salary. And there was really nowhere else to go in the industry. And I was working, 6 a.m., 6:30 usually was my first client until 9:30 at night. The trainer schedule with a couple holes in the middle of the day. And that was really, really fun when I was 23 years old. But there was just this nagging feeling of, is this what my life is going to be like? Like at some point, I'm going to want a family. I know that I'm going to want to do a lot of traveling in my life. And clearly what I'm doing now, while super fun, is not conducive to all of those things. And so I never wanted to get away from training clients. Like I love training clients. I still, if you ask me, like I'm going to go back to training clients at one point. Like I love it. But I started searching how to make, multiple streams of income, passive income. This was like 2008, right? This was before, the internet obviously was around, but it wasn't the type, you had to go out and actively find this stuff. It didn't find you, I guess is the best way to explain it. And so I went to the bookstore and I found a whole bunch of books on multiple streams of income and marketing and that kind of thing. And I wrote down the names of them and then I walked across the street to the library and I checked out as many books as I could find. And I just started reading and I started, thinking about ideas or what I might do. It wasn't internet marketing, digital nomadery or whatever, wasn't like a thing. Like no parent in 2008 was proud that their son was an entrepreneur, traveling the world. Like that wasn't it just wasn't something that people really did. It wasn't common. And so, I built a business plan for 2 smoothie operations. Like I studied residential real estate investing for 6 months. Like I was just looking for something. And I would love to say Michael, I would love to sit here and talk to you and be like,
Yeah.
I saw a problem and I wanted to change the world and I wanted to help. Nah, man, I was out there for me. I wanted to make my life better.
Yeah.
That was my motivation, right? And so I came across this term called infopreneuring. Basically, you can sell your information and make money with it. Seems obvious now. This was not obvious in 2008.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, the recommendation in this book, it was called Multiple Streams of Income by Robert G. Allen. I don't know if it's an old book. I don't know if I'd recommend it anymore, but that was the book. Talked about infopreneuring, right? And it recommended that in order to become an infopreneur, you know, the quiet neighborhood millionaire, you know, where nobody really knows what you're doing or how you have money, but everybody's like, that guy seems to have a lot of money. Like, we don't really know what the heck's going on. Doesn't seem like he works particularly hard. It's like, it recommended, it's like, start with a book, right? And then from there, you can do all these other things. So I did. I started with a book, and then I figured out I had to promote the book. And so I started a website, and every stage of it was just figuring it out. Like, I decided I wanted to write a book. So on the back of my clipboard, every single day, I'd write down what I did with my clients. And then I'd go home at night and I'd type it up. That was how the manuscript of the book came. And I was like, well, I guess I need an editor. I don't really know what editors do, but I feel like books have editors. So I was like, well, I don't know anybody who's written a book, but I know where books exist. So I went to the bookstore and I looked at all the best-selling fitness books, and I wrote down the names of their authors, and I found their websites, and I emailed them and I said, hi, can I be introduced to your editor? And a bunch of them introduced me to their editor, and Brad Schoenfeld introduced me to Kelly James Anger, who I ended up working with. And then I wanted to start a website, and I didn't know anybody with a website except for one of my clients. Her name is Alexandra Orlando. She was an Olympic gymnast. And so I called up Alex and I said, hey, Alex, who did your website? I need a website. She said, my buddy Pat did. Pat Benetti then built the original website for $1,500. Like, it just, every stage of the game was just figuring it out like that, right? And that's what happens. That's what happens when you just do stuff. You find out. I mean, my entire journey is just figuring it out, that you can figure it out step by step, and that's okay.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's, you know, it's a story being there, or you know, definitely a way of where you can see where all the business has developed to where it's become now, is actually going out and doing the work, doing the legwork, and getting the business yourself. And I think a lot of, it's definitely personal trainers tend to be either shy, too scared, or afraid of going up and doing the legwork. So just going back to what you said about leaving the gym to go online to give yourself some freedom, what would be your sort of advice to someone who may be stuck in that gym environment that wants to get out or maybe get online? What would you suggest the first steps would be?
The first steps to me is actually financial steps. I have found over the years that a lot of trainers are really irresponsible financially. And not necessarily irresponsible in that they overspend or anything like that. They're just unaware of their financial situation. And what happens when you are unaware of your financial situation is you become fearful. And that paralyzes you and gets you stuck. And so everybody, you know, I can't give specific advice like do this, then do this, then do this, because everybody's different, right? Some people have debt, some people have dependents that they need to support. Everybody's different in terms of their own situation, their background. And so my best recommendation is just to accurately take the time to take stock in where you're at financially. And the way that I do this is, as you know, Michael, from the Online Trainer Academy, is there's this equation, the freedom number equation. And that was passed on to me through one of my clients. And it's how I broke free from the gym, right? Like, my goal was never to get away from training. My goal was just to open up a little bit of space so that I could keep training and working with people for longer, because I loved it. And I knew that what I was doing was just not sustainable. You know, I could do it for a bunch more years. I could do it in my 20s, sure. but it wasn't sustainable. And then my life took me in another direction, which is great. But like, that's what happens when you open up space, right? You start to be taken down a road and you're able to follow that and investigate it, which is really cool. And so this idea with the freedom number is quite simple. It's be very honest. How much money do you need every month to live? Right? If you have debt payments, include that, of course. If you have dependents, include taking care of dependents. What's your rent? What's your food? What are your bare minimums? Right? And then what can you not live without? Like whenever I do this, it's like, well, it's very important to me that when I did this originally, my girlfriend, now my wife, that we have a fund for a date night once a week. It's just really important for me. We don't do expensive stuff, but $50 a week, right? So $200 a month. So I added 2. So what's that number for you? Right? I call that my freedom number. How much are you making now? Are you making that? Okay. Well, either you are, either you're not. Regardless, can you be making that and perhaps free up a little bit of time or begin to condense your schedule? Because what happened with me is that when I did this equation, like I said, it was passed on by one of my clients. He actually walked into the gym one day. He was 10 minutes late, of course, because he was always 10 minutes late. But he walked into the gym one day and he just took a book out of his bag, and it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And he just handed it to me and he says, I wish that somebody had given me this book when I was your age. And I don't think you're going to be my personal trainer for much longer. And he handed me the book. And this guy happened to be the chief of psychiatry at one of the biggest hospitals in Toronto, of course. So like he got it. Like we got along really, really well. Like I trained him for 4 or 5 years. We still talk every once in a while now, 10 years later. And so we passed on that equation to me. And what happened when I went through it is I realized that I was actually already at that number. I was a single guy living in a 1-bedroom apartment. My number wasn't super high, right? And I was able to graduate university debt free. I worked through university, but I also had support from my parents. So I had every advantage in the world. And so I was already at that number comfortably. And what that allowed me to do, it gave me the space and the permission then to condense and or give away some of my clients and reinvest that new time to bettering myself and bettering my future, as opposed to trying to earn as much money at a lower rate today. What I was able to do was I was able to systematically condense my clients into tighter chunks, open up big swaths of time that and make a little bit less money, right? I would work fewer hours. But what that allowed me to do was just read a lot more. It allowed me to, I started going to New York and going to events and stuff like that all the time and just meeting people and shaking hands. So it allowed me to build my network more. It also led to my first book, because then I had time to write that first book, which led to whatever the heck I'm doing now, but it's definitely nothing that I anticipated. And the other part of it was that because I was reading so much more and studying so much more and learning so much more, my effective rate training clients went from 25 to 4180 in less than a year, because I was just doing such a better job and my clients loved it so much more and I was so much more valuable to our management. So all of these things started to happen, and it all happened because I took just a little bit of time to say, what's that number, right, for me financially? And then cool, like I got some space to actually invest into my own future now. And I think a lot of particularly younger men and women, they conflate working really hard with working very smart when they're young, not realizing that bettering yourself, self-development, and also investments into assets that work for you, like intellectual property that you build, like your network, compound. And compounding is the most powerful force in the universe. And the earlier you start compounding, the better it will be. And so I'm happy Tom gave me that book.
Great stuff. Yeah, definitely. I think I've been a personal trainer since 2013. And when I first started, I was sort of reluctant, if you like, to spend money to sort of earn money. So doing the expensive mentorship programs, the coaching and things. But then I sort of sat down and thought, well, how can I expect clients to pay me to coach them if I'm not willing to fork out the money myself for my own coach and my own development, to then move on to develop their coaching and their service.
Right.
And that's what the sort of turning point for me was. And that's when I started investing then in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just what I think it's very important to just take stock of where you are. Like, I never signed up for expensive mentorship programs. I just read a lot of books. Right. I read a ton of books. I tried a lot of things. I read a lot of studies. You know, I read a lot of research back then. And I read research not just about fitness. I mean, I read a lot of fitness research for sure. I read a lot of marketing research. I read a lot of original marketing research. And particularly around computer mediated communication, around the psychology of message transduction online, basically why people use social media. I didn't read some newfound thought leader like interpretation of whatever you should do right now with the algorithm. I read the original research on that stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that was what I did.
Yeah.
Right. That was what I did. But at any point in time, you got to take stock of what you have. Like, I was young, I was single, I had time. And so I didn't have a lot of money, but I had time. So I did that. But no, I mean, I've never hired a business coach in my life, which is, surprises a lot of people. I think all of my experience is just by doing stuff. Even I have an executive coach now who really is just somebody to talk about deeper, like, business development stuff. But he's more like a psychiatrist than anything else. He just keeps me from going off the rails. But even, I'll tell you, like, my wife, Allison, wanted to get into real estate investing 2 years ago. And she did a great job. She did a really, really good job just doing tons of research and stuff like that. And eventually got to the point where she said, I'm thinking of doing a mentorship. It's 15 grand. And I kind of looked at her and I said, all right, well, let's talk about this. Like, maybe, what do you hope to get out of the mentorship? Oh, I hope to learn from somebody how to do my first deal. Like, why don't you just find somebody to do your first deal with that's done this a bunch of times?
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to spend 15 grand on a mentorship, you can spend 50 grand on a mortgage, right? Yeah. If we were going to do that anyway, I'm saying, like, obviously you have to have the money to do it. And so that's what she did. Right. So instead she found, Mandy. Mandy's done 160 JV partnerships. She's now our JV partner. And she's been a mentor to Allison. And now we have 4 investment properties and 15 units. Right. In our first year. Whereas if we did a mentorship, maybe we would have done 1 property by now. Maybe. Right. It's just the difference of, like, at a certain point in time, you got to just kind of do shit and see what happens, as long as you can absorb the risk. Yeah,
definitely. And I think it's all about perspective as well. And, like you've got 2 different perspectives there, whereas a lot of people may tend to have that closed inside the box, where sometimes you just got to think outside the box. And I think that's where a lot of people tend to get stuck in the mundane, and they get stuck in the couple of hours in the morning, couple of hours in the evening, with that massive gap. Talking as a personal trainer, of course. Talking about investments and working and business, what would be your sort of 5 non-negotiables if you was to start your own business, or to go self-employed and try and set up your own business?
5 non-negotiables? You can ask me for 5
give me
of these
2
things? Then. Hell no, I'm not giving you 5 of them. I can't think 5 steps ahead.
Just think,
I'm a
one for
shoot
each
first,
business.
ask questions later, dude. I ain't put 5 steps of strategy in place for you. Which is funny because my number one tip is to ignore what's right in front of you and play the long game. There's so much noise and crap in front of all of us that makes us think that we have to do it. You have to do Instagram reels because the algorithm is good and you should point at words in the middle of nowhere because that's content. It's like, no, it isn't. That's stupid. And, maybe that is a part of a strategy, but don't pretend like you're doing work because you're pointing at words in space on Instagram. Don't, that's productive procrastination is all that is. What are you doing? Have you done the deep work? Think about how many people in fitness right now are working tremendously hard and getting almost nothing in return for all of their work. Their efforts are they're just diffusing into the ether, because there's nobody took just even one step backwards. Like we teach in the Online Trainer Academy, dial in on your story on what makes you different. You know how few people actually do that? You know how powerful it is when you do that?
Yeah.
If you take even an hour to dive deep into that activity, everything you do moving forward will be more effective. Most people don't, because they're so into all of the stuff they see other people see, and they feel like they've got to put all this content out into the world. It's like, well, actually, one piece of content could do more. One piece of content that's really good, that hits really hard, could do more for you and your business than 10,000 pieces of mediocre content. It's not about doing more. Yeah. And so that's number one. Number two is just, the financial stuff is massive. You got to understand how money works. Yeah. You have to understand the difference between good debt and bad debt. You have to take stock of your situation. You have to understand the risk. Look up asymmetric risk. It's probably the most important concept for growing a business today. And if you don't understand those things, you're going to have a really hard time, because you're going to be competing against other people who do, and are going to be able to make their money work for them way better than you can. A dollar is not a dollar is not a dollar. If you want, you can leverage that dollar 10 ways. Just to give you one example, this is not business development, but wealth generation, right? Yeah. And just what you can do. I mean, I'm not necessarily recommending this, but what you can do. We bought our house in March. This is 2 years ago, but we bought our house in March. Interest rate was 2.49. Good interest rate. So we took as big of a mortgage as they'd give us, right? We could have paid down more, but we took as big of a mortgage as they give us, because we knew that we can get way more in our money than that. Okay, October hits. The housing market has gone up a fair bit and interest rates have dropped. So we looked into it. Well, okay, it's going to cost us $17,000 to break our current mortgage, but we can take out a new mortgage at 1.5. And we spent $300 to get our house reappraised for $200,000 more than we bought it for. So $17,000 we spent. We saved over $40,000 in our mortgage. Yeah. And we took $200,000 out and we used that to buy 3 more rental properties. Yeah. Same honest, same amount of money, right? There's no extra, just understanding that. Those basic principles. Yeah. Right. And I mean, you have to have a bit first to be able to do stuff like that. But a lot of people have access to more resources than they think. They just, for whatever reason, I mean, I think I posted this on Instagram a couple of weeks back, the 2 subjects that they should teach in school but don't. Yeah. The first one is how money works. Yeah. The second one is the science of happiness. I think that's pretty important. But how money works, how does it actually work? Doesn't mean that you necessarily want to do this, because part of understanding it is understanding your own philosophy towards money and your own risk tolerance. Yeah. totally different conversation. But if you understand those things, all of a sudden now you've got a pretty big leg up.
Yeah. And it's surprising how many people don't actually know their outgoings as well as their incoming, as well as their outgoings on both.
Yeah,
business
even
and
the
personal.
most basic, right? Even the most basic. Like, how much money did you spend? How much money did you make?
Yeah.
Like,
It's surprising how common that is, where they'll just spend and spend, and then they get to the 2 or 3 weeks into the month, and then it's, oh, I haven't got anything left.
right.
What am I going to do for the next week or two until I get paid again?
It's crazy.
Yeah,
Crazy.
I was. So, am I right in thinking that you're in Canada currently now?
I'm in Mexico at the moment, actually. I'm from Canada, but I'm living in Mexico for the winter.
Ah, right. Okay. So I seen you were traveling quite a bit. It's over 100 days I seen, is it? Are you still traveling or just staying in Mexico for?
I mean, we're living here. Like, I've lived abroad 4 to 6 months a year, every year for the last 9 years. So this is our 4th winter in this little town that we live in Mexico. And but yeah, we, last couple of years we haven't moved around as much, but the years prior to that we moved around a fair bit. Yeah, it's fun.
How was
Good time, man.
how was COVID affected that?
I mean, it depends where you stand on everything.
Yeah.
The nice part is, if I was back in Toronto, I'd be inside almost all day.
Yeah,
and
quite strict
in Mexico,
at the minute.
Well, they're quite strict, and also it's just cold, so you're inside.
Yeah.
Whereas, in Mexico, like, everything's open air. I mean, I might go for a week without being indoors anywhere.
Yeah.
So way safer, no matter where you stand on the spectrum of vaccinated, unvaccinated.
Yeah. I don't
give a
care
shit
about
enough to comment on it. But
no.
I mean, the reality of it is we're outside basically all day, every day. So it's fine. Like,
Yeah, great.
Brilliant. Transmission rates outdoors are basically nil, right?
Yeah.
And we're always outdoors. So it's pretty good. Yeah, man, it's great.
Yeah, brilliant. But like, Canada's great for outdoors as well, mind.
Not in the winter, dude. Not in the winter.
Record that.
Yeah, not in the winter. Yeah, well, you're talking to the wrong guy. I do have to run though. I do have to close this off. I apologize for that. I'm enjoying this conversation, but I gotta hop onto another podcast.
No problem at all. Thank you very much for coming on. Just quickly before we close it down, where can people find more about you? I'll put it in the links as well.
Yeah, Instagram's the best place. It's Coach Goodman is my Instagram. That's the best place to find me. Great stuff. Much appreciated. Really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for chatting to me. Thanks. Good chat. Bye-bye. Thanks. Cheers. Bye, everyone.